Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United with me, Nathan Oakley. Joining me shortly will be Kyle MacDonald to discuss Flat Earth. If you're new to this channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon to keep up to date with videos from Nathan Oakley 1980. This OBS behind the scenes stream will serve as kind of like a rolling advert for the main Google Plus Hangouts on Air show, which is linked in the description below. If you're watching this on the re-upload and you don't want to sit through the dead air and setup and scratchy fumblings of me sending out links, click on that link and it'll take you straight to the Google Plus show once that has recorded. In the meantime, I'm going to transition across to my photographs just so I can get the link shared to Kyle, and as I say, hopefully he will join us in around 15 or 20 minutes time from now. The other purpose really for the second chat is because if you don't like the chat in the OBS stream, it's very easy to join the other chat on the Google Plus Hangouts on Airstream. Let's just share this link and I will actually talk a little bit about trolls before we have the grace of Kyle. Check this is going to the right place. Title it show link for Kyle. You're getting the link via email, just so you know. Link. Got sent. Hopefully that's actually gone. Your message has been sent. Excellent. Right, so let's get back to OBS. So the two different feeds means that you can talk to different people, and if you don't like a particular person in the chat room, my first advice would be to just not talk to them, try to ignore them. And yesterday on Skype I had this discussion with a few other fellow potatoes on the subject of trolling, and the case is definitely that we all don't see eye to eye in terms of our methods, me being probably the most extreme amongst us because I don't have any moderation other than what I do live and what Google has implemented in the systems with automatic stream, or what do you call it, censorship I suppose. It has a show or hide button that appears on anything that has profanity in it. I don't exactly know what the parameters are, but they seem to spot spam. And both my streams have got I think it's 3 seconds of slow mode, so you can't just send repeated spam. The trouble is that during the discussions about trolls, some of the attitudes were such that they should just be banned. If somebody says something that is vulgar or untoward, they should be banned. And I, in principle, would agree if you could actually ban them. And I don't think you can, because there's only really two people that occupy chat rooms, or two different types of YouTuber. The first is like me, which is to say that I've got, I'm going to say one account. I've actually got 3: Oakley Cord, Nathan Oakley, and Nathan Oakley 1980. But if we, for this example, say that I've got one account, and I go in and naysay or am a contrarian, I disagree, then if I am banned from that chat room, the chances are I will never return. There is no point, you know, if I watch the show again on an after broadcast, it's unlikely, because the fun is in the chatting in the chat room, or at least it is for me. It's a big part of the social aspect of Flat Earth. So for me, as subject or example number 1, or example A, once I've been banned, that's it. I'll never return to those chat rooms. Obviously there are exceptions to that rule, so there will be occasions where I have rejoined or whatever, but that aside, there's a good chance that you simply lose a viewer by banning them. So that's the first type of person. The second type of person, which is usually the actual trolls, they say something vulgar or disagreeable and you ban them, only for them to return instantly with a different screen name. So the people that you would actually genuinely want to ban, you are unable to, based on the fact that you can create multiple accounts on YouTube all day long. So in my mind, it's kind of pointless. Unfortunately, the vulgarity and the naysaying and the disagreements in the chat rooms are simply unavoidable. The people who are determined to be in there will be in there, regardless of whether or not they are banned, timed out, or otherwise. And to a small extent, I can say that I am also part of that list because I have 3 accounts. Admittedly, all live accounts. They are all running with videos and subscribers. They are not sock accounts, as they sometimes get called, but they most certainly aren't. The one that gets called the sock account most often is Oakley Cord because it's got a slightly ambiguous name. But in reality, that's a 10-year-old account. You know, it's my longest standing account. But I digress. Those accounts are useful for when I am banned because there's a good chance that there is a final point that I would like to get in, and this is where the main trolls, the people with hundreds of accounts, have exactly the same attitude as me, but they won't limit their last word to 3 accounts, which is what I would do. You know, if somebody banned me for having a contrarian opinion, I would simply return in Nathan Oakley immediately and say, well, you know, you've banned me and it's unfair for these reasons, I will never return. And I would state that quite clearly. But that, you know, for me that would be the case, and for most people they probably wouldn't even go back to say I will never return, because they're not, you know, they haven't got their head quite as far up their arse as I have, and you know, I want people to know that I'm not returning. But that aside, that type of person you don't necessarily want to ban, or at least I don't. I see that person as a viewer, and I see the troll as a nuisance that is unavoidable, or it's not possible to actually get rid of that person, or at least in my view you can't. So why bother trying? You may as well let all chat in the chat room. And as much as it's frustrating to see horrible people in there saying horrible things to other people, you know, sticks and stones, try to ignore them. And my main point, that there are, at least in this instance, other chat rooms, fortunately for me, with exactly the same feed. Not until I obviously start the Google chat once Kyle does actually join us. So yes, I'm going to have another double check that Kyle has actually received that email, make sure it is in my sent box. And hopefully about 20 minutes. That's had it. Excellent stuff. What I will do is I'll share the main Google Plus stream in various different places like Skype. As I say, if you don't like the dead air, sincerest apologies, but you can, once it's rendered, at least click on the link below. The useful thing for these streams is when Kyle does join, I have explained on the email that he will be live as soon as he joins. There's occasionally parts of the conversation that you would love to dedicate to air, and while I really want a polished show, I get to have my cake and eat it this way. I get to have my polished show with all the levels done nicely. You know, obviously as soon as Kyle joins, his levels won't be done, and you know, he might be, you know, getting his camera set up, getting his lighting set up, whatever he does when he joins a live stream. But during that time, there's going to be conversation, and no, it's not polished and you know, following an introduction and a sort of a vague idea of what I'm going to ask, and a sort of beginning, middle, and end, which is what you will definitely get with the Google Plus stream. But as I say, it's I didn't want to sacrifice some of those beginning conversations before the show go out, and moreover, the conversations that you have after the show, some of the after show conversations when people breathe because it says off air. Again, I do make my guests aware that they are still streaming, albeit to a more limited audience. But again, in truth, by the time the shows are both running, the chances are the people who desert the Google Plus stream will go straight to the OBS stream. So at that point, it's not a limited audience, although obviously now it is, which is what I will reiterate to Kyle as and when he joins. Yattering away rather than actually grabbing show links and sharing. So let's just do that now. Open up Skype. Stick it in a few of these group chats that are on Skype. Very handy. 20 or 30 people at a time. The links. Bang, bang, bang. Some of them have some pretty funny names. Don't. So what we're going in now. Flat Earth goes mainstream. Potatoes remain unmashed, although many come at them armed with mashers. And that's an actual name of a Skype chat, believe it or not. 100th live stream. That's one I set up for 100th stream that I've done. I'm sure the people in the chat are riveted by this. I will come and chat to you as soon as I've fired out this link a few times. Potatoes assemble. See, that's enough people, I think. And just so I'm not distracted while I'm not with Kyle, I'll send it out on Facebook. Hello to the 30 odd people who are watching. Good to have you all here. Infinite Plane Society. Good to have you here. No wrenches, I'm afraid. Thank you for the donation in Super Chat. Much obliged. Headlines debunked. Good to have you here. Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails. One of my favourite names ever. Let's just go back to camera. Maybe with the chat up as well. Yeah, that's distance. That's the problem. When it's on OBS, you can't actually read it. Let's go to the main one. There we go. Yes, good to have you here, Mr. Flat Taxi Rainbow Chemtrails. Andre Z Design. Good to have you here. Toto Cult. Good to see you. Mr. Smith. Hello. You were indeed first, Mr. Smith. Although I think you'll actually find I was first. James Hicks Boson. Good name. Hello and pleased to have you here. Lazy Boy Researcher. See you. James Hicks Boson, one of your messages has been auto-moderated by Google. Can't quite see what it is. Too greyed out, too far at this distance. Free Truth, Paula. Pleased to have you here. Click on Free Truth. Be sure to subscribe to her channel. What's we got in here? Rachins. Can't see it at this distance. I wish I could read a bit better. My actual screen is about 3.5 feet and it's not a massive monitor. It's just a little one. So I can just about make it up. I've got it blown up to 125% and stuff still isn't quite clear. Especially if it's not like an obvious thing to read. So my apologies. Rach, I'm going to call you. R-A-C. Let's get a bit closer. I-N-E-I-S-M. I think I'm not going to try and pronounce that. Flat Max UK. Now that's much more like it. Much easier to say. Is that Irk Childs I saw? I'm sure I did. Good to have you here. LB Illustrations. Thank you very much for the images you sent me. Really, really liked those. Wish I'd caught them myself. But I have to confess, I didn't actually notice the colour. I'm colourblind. So it was after the fact that I had realised, I think it was Left Hand Path put a video up and described verbally the fact that it was red. I'm sure it was red. Yeah, red. So, yeah, the red sun of Hurricane Ophelia wasn't actually apparent to me because I'm colourblind. But what was apparent was that it looked like the moon. And what I mean by that is you could see definition. It looked spherical. It looked very unusual, and both my child and I, had a double take. She's not particularly old, but she certainly knew something was up when she looked up at the sun. It's one where obviously I point out the sun to her quite frequently, and she looked at it and kind of gave me that look, and I looked at it and went, "Wow, that's unusual." Don't quite know what it is about it, but you can see it, and you just think it must just be because there's this haze, this dusty cloud that you're looking at it through, that you can, filter out the glare of the sun and actually see the definition to the edges a little bit more. But yeah, the main selling point, the main attraction, the colour, was beyond me, unfortunately. But it was nice to get those pictures from you, and stick those up. P. Mars said that I wasn't actually doing any research on that video. He said, I'm just stealing other people's stuff, basically plagiarising you. So hopefully, if he ever asks, not that he probably will, please set him straight that you've sent them me unsolicited. Yeah, that would be wonderful. I have no desire to steal anything from anybody, contrary to what P. Mars may think. Shout out to P. Mars if he's watching. Mojo Shop, good to have you here. Good to see you. Timaeus, pleased to have you here. Is that Subliminal Illness? With capital ILL. Thanks for being here. Globeshite. Good to see you. Not a donation, an investment. Ah, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for the investment. Someday you'll need a favour. You will come to me. I could do better with my Godfather references. You penguins spammed. How are you doing that? I could have swore I put slow mode on. No, slow mode is... He's obviously taking 3 seconds between his penguin spam. With that much determination, you definitely deserve to spam. That's it for the chat. Where are we at? 10 to the hour. Oh, I was hoping we'd be joined by Kyle by now. Sent me a reply. Okay, got it. Oh, brilliant. Yes. He's got the link, so hopefully he'll join us shortly. Skype. There we go. Send contact request. That message here. Hello, Kyle. Oh no, it won't let me. Oh no, gotta get your request accepted. Did I say hello to Flat Sabbath already? I don't think I did. Hello, Flat Sabbath and Martin Liedtke. Pleased to have you here. Oi to you too. Might take the camera off me just while I wait for Kyle. Excuse the dead air. If there's anything particularly pressing, I'll go back to the chat and actually read some of the messages maybe. That might prove useful. Daniel Reza, pleased to have you here. Colon awesome colon gives you a giant smiley face. For anybody who wants to type in the chat with a big fat smiley happy face, colon awesome colon is what you need to type. Now that this background stream has been running for a good 15 minutes or so, I had some bad news today. And my 101, almost 102-year-old grandmother passed away this morning, which was quite upsetting for all. Happy life that she has lived, but no one ever wants to see a loved one slip away. So rest in peace. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Edith Hawkes. You will sorely be missed. Yeah, thanks, Childs. I appreciate your sympathies. You and Kyle are now contacts. Happy days. I'll send him the link on Skype as well. Let's just do that as well. I'll give one more plug before Kyle joins to the main show, the main event. So if you're sitting here now watching this thinking, God, this is boring, just click on the link in the info box and it'll take you straight to the slick, polished Google Plus part of the show. There we go, Kyle. So you've now had Google Plus Hangouts on air, sign-in link on email and on Skype. Higgs boson is otherwise known as the God particle, is it not? So James God particle.
All right.
Ha ha ha. We are joined by Kyle.
Hi.
Can we hear you?
I can. I think so. Let me just check my mic. Can you hear me?
Nope, no sound. Nothing yet.
Mute. Mute. Sound. Sound. Sound.
Nope, nothing.
I'm gonna just. Well, let's just go. Does that sound good?
There's only one list of only a couple of things I can suggest. Obviously, I can't hear you, so I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully, so.
I can hear you.
On the Hangout page, if you move your mouse over it, there's a cog at the top, and in that cog, it's got audio settings, and it's probably just set your mic to something that isn't actually what you want it to be. That's the first thing. Is that a bit of a go?
I'm gonna take off this headset.
Oh, no, you're bobbing up and down now. So why am I not getting you?
Okay.
Mind.
There we go. That should sound good now. Oh. Does it sound good now?
Oh no, I'm not hearing you.
It's showing that I have audio now.
There we go. Got you.
Okay. So I got that microphone.
It was just me. I just got the preamp set to the wrong input, so I wouldn't have heard anything.
It was set to my headphone.
Oh, it was you as well. But as soon as I saw the levels bobbing up and down, I knew I had a problem as well. So
the double fake out.
Yeah, literally, we're both useless.
Yeah.
So good to have you.
Yeah, how you doing?
Not too bad. I should tell you straight away. So this bit is being broadcast to a limited audience, and then what I'll do in 5 or so minutes' time is give you a proper introduction, and then we'll do a more polished show. But when I end that, so again at the end, I'll round out, ask you to plug stuff, all the usual stuff. But when I end, just be mindful that there is still going to be probably at that point a larger audience, because the main audience deserts the main show and comes across to the behind the scenes bit, which is what we're doing now.
But undressing for a shower.
Yeah, don't do that. Well, I mean, you can. It would make for great, compelling viewing, that's for sure.
Maybe do it by accident.
Accidentally on purpose.
These like sex tapes that get accidentally released or whatever, right? But it's just me and my cat. It'd be kind of creepy, actually. There's Marley, just chilling.
Looks very clean there.
Marley.
You're a very clean person.
This is my no. This is my girlfriend's office, and it is the opposite of how my stuff looks. My stuff looks like the opposite of it, clean. She has a very clean space. Yeah.
So that would make more sense. You're an artist, so I can imagine you making quite a considerable amount of mess, actually.
This room right here used to be my studio a year ago, and you couldn't even see anything over here. There was just stuff stacked in here. So some people call it hoarding. I call it artistic arsenal creation, but whatever.
It's expensive stuff though, isn't it? Art supplies. You can't just chuck stuff away.
It's expensive if you buy art supplies, but if you go buy like gallons of paint off mist tints from a paint store, they're like $3, and you can just you have unlimited paint for pretty much free. So I've been making my own canvases, buying cheap paint, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, just leveling you up. Sorry, I'm half paying attention and half paying attention to getting you sounding. Fair enough. A nice.
On like TV broadcast, they always pretend to be interested. They feign interest. Like, oh, hey, so what's the weather like there right now? Or they ask these really small talk. What are you wearing right now? Can you describe what was the traffic like? So.
Yeah. So, what's the weather there like now?
Well, it was raining, but it stopped. Looks like it might rain again.
Oh, the irony. I was only kidding.
Yeah, sometimes I just I'll lie to them and just be like, yeah, we don't have weather here. And they'll be like, oh, cool, that's great. Well, they don't, because they're not paying attention.
Fair enough. We don't have a weather here either. Perfectly benign.
Weather's done. Weather's boring.
It's boring. You're not kidding. It's actually, I say it's boring. It's not. It's less boring. You've got people like Stephen Chess who are actually looking at the weather now in a different way. When I say the weather's boring, what is presented to us in the mainstream media as weather is boring, because 99% of the time it's not right. You know, it has no basis of prediction that you can use yourself. You're just a total slave to what they tell you there and then in the moment on the news. And it's like, that's boring. That's useless. What's the point in watching that crap? Same as the news itself.
Weather's like the most fascinating, interesting thing out there, but it's presented to us as something that we need to talk about around like a water cooler or complain about, or it's like, I don't know. When people complain about the weather, it's kind of like, well, do something else or go somewhere else. Like, what are you going to do about it? Maybe we could do something about it, though.
Well, we could know what was going on better. I mean, I tend to think that kids know exactly what's going on with the weather, and it's because they're not really thinking about it. They have a general understanding, and they're not being poisoned by mainstream media. I was going to say news, but so in what would be defined as a cool period, so let's say the end of winter, you'd see generally adults walking around in thick coats, and you'd see the kids in shorts and t-shirts, and you actually look out the window of the bus or whatever it is, the car you're driving, and you go, yeah, outside of my air-conditioned car, it's actually a lovely day. And, you know, I just haven't... most people don't pay enough attention to it. They just look at the weather forecast and know that it's a cold time of year, therefore you need a coat at all times. Whereas the kids look out the window, go, oh, nice day, shorts today, I can feel it's hot. But
yeah, good point. Or they're used to a certain period of the year, like, and the kids don't care. Like, it was dumping rain, like just coming down in buckets today. And my daughter looked out and she's like, outside, boots, jacket. So she's just like, let's go. I don't care about the weather. I want to go out, and there's puddles out there that I haven't been stepped in yet. And I'm going to change that.
To be a kid. I'm looking forward to that. My kid will soon be wanting to stomp in puddles. We've bought her first wellies and all that. So I can't wait.
How old is she?
14 months.
14 months. Yeah, my daughter's 22. So it's, you know, she'll start to talk, and then you'll see.
Yeah, exciting times.
Fingers crossed that she sleeps. That's the main thing, as long as you get sleep.
No, she's definitely not a sleeper. So
well, maybe one day.
Well, hopefully, you know, according to my sister, she thinks it'll be at least 2 or 3. So I've got probably at least another 6 months of every 3 hours, if not every 2 hours, if not every 1 hour, being woken up. Since I clicked start, I've heard my wife woken up at least once.
It's real. Like, that's the hardest part of parenting is you're not going to sleep. Forget sleeping in too.
Yeah, no, that's the thing of the past now. But it's coupled with flat Earth. Suddenly, I mean, I have absolutely no time. Patricia asked yesterday on the secret hangout. She's like, "What have you gained and lost from flat Earth?" And I was like, "All free time has gone. There is none." You know, that's not just flat Earth. That's kid and flat Earth means 0 free time, none. Not that I'm complaining. Life is sweet.
No, I agree, but it takes up like so much room because it's both are so fascinating in very, very distinctly different ways. Like, I'm watching cartoons now with her, and I'm watching like, oh, there's the Globe programming, and there's a kids show called Paw Patrol, and they save this dog, and the dog's name is Apollo, and the pups save Apollo, and there's like sun imagery around him, and there's symbolism in these cartoons, and I think that some of it's accidental, but some of it's being put in place for very specific reasons. Right,
let's do the show proper. What I'm gonna do in a sec is I'm gonna click start. There'll be a 10-second gap. If you can just, I don't know if your mic's on the table, isn't it?
Yeah, is it bumping?
Yeah, it's just every time you knock the table, I think it puts the camera across to you.
I'll keep my hands up. Yeah, I tend to talk with my arms, so.
It's all right. It's just one of those things. It's a nice mic though. You sound nice and clear, whatever it is.
Yeah. Blue Yeti.
Oh, same as me. Okay, right. I'm gonna click the start button, and then I'll say welcome to Flat Earth United, and then we'll just go. I've not actually got anything. I don't think I need to plan much with yourself. I think the conversation will be pretty easy and free flowing anyway. But yeah, right. 10 seconds. Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United. Joining me this evening is Kyle MacDonald. How you doing, Kyle?
Doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing fine and dandy. It's really, really good to have you here. I've been wanting to talk one red paperclip for as long as I've been watching your videos. It's just something I can really, really relate to, having pretty much, I don't want to say done the same thing because I definitely don't own a house, but I've managed to self-sustain from doing something similar. So before we get to that, I want to kick off with the most important question that there is, which is, how did you find out Earth is flat?
You know what? I listened to everyone when you ask this question, answer very eloquently, and they have a very specific thing. I'm trying to think. It was last year. I was watching some videos, and then you know what? I don't even know. I don't remember. It was seeing the space pictures being faked is what got me. Seeing through the NASA lies was what got me to say, oh wait, if they're faking this, why would they be faking this? And then everything else after that. That was the main key for me. It wasn't about finding. It was the space pictures. Spacewalks in a pool. All of space being a fisheye lensed, and watching the mainstream media always talk about the curvature of the Earth. So they'd say the balloons would go up, and they could see the curve from the balloon. And then you watch the video go up, and there'd be a very specific spot where it would bend over like this, and then it would go flat, and then it would go concave and stuff. But the media was constantly saying you could see the curvature of the Earth. And I knew that so many media outlets were lying about everything through the US presidential campaign last year. And I said, why are they constantly pushing this? It looks like they're pushing a narrative. They're pushing a myth. And yeah, so no specific spot, but it was just sort of watching the lies, watching the deception essentially take place.
But before that, were you aware at any level that there was deception going on at NASA or 9/11, or were you a truther?
I guess like it's one of these things where I never really looked into this stuff. I was just busy doing other things. I really believed the mainstream story of 9/11 until last December, and I just never looked into it. And then someone said, hey, look at Building 7 or whatever. And I went and watched it once, and I said, that's nonsense. And everything fell apart. I didn't even get into psyops until like 6 months ago. The idea that people would have a faked event or a fake shooting, I never, ever, ever knew this would happen. This was happening and has been happening for a long time. And I was flat Earth, like 100% full flat Earth before I found out about most of these things, because I was focusing on the geographical aspects of it, and specifically how the media was faking curvature, pushing the NASA lies, and then the perspective. You could see very clearly they were spinning and misdirecting away from actual truths due to perspective. Like it's commonly said that boats go over the horizon. If you zoom in, you'll pull them back. And that's not always true, but they don't go over the horizon. They go into the distance. And nobody in mainstream media or mainstream science was acknowledging the fact that they do go into the distance. They were pushing the over the curve myth. And I really focused on this first, understanding the psychology of deception, of how the geography of where we live could be essentially totally falsified to create a inverted fake model that would indoctrinate people into a scientism version of the Earth. And then everything else after that was quite easy to click together, all the psyops and the lies and the misdirection on other fronts.
I mean, it's very topical at the moment because we've got censorship on YouTube based on what a lot of flat earthers will call false flags, hoaxes, and such like. And with flat Earth, in my opinion, I don't know, I'm going to raise this as a question, see if you agree with me. I don't think it is being censored, and I don't think it's being censored because it's long established. A lot of the false flags and hoaxes are literally in development as we watch them, so they're not going to want anybody messing around with that while they're being penned, while they're literally writing history. Whereas with flat Earth, I think there's no need to censor it. We've got what we call shills are people, regular Joe, who's just indoctrinated with the globe lie, and therefore will fight tooth and nail without any motivation from government or a paycheck to do so. But that means that we have, in my humble opinion, the upper hand. There's no power that should not be standing over flat Earth saying we must draw a line through these videographers rather than under them. We don't want the advertising revenue anymore. Quite the contrary. You picked apart the Google advertising where they said the Earth is flat? Question mark. You know, you debunked somebody that had basically pointed out that there was a different version of the ad, but ultimately nobody is standing over the guy in that advertising department stopping him from putting that into the advert.
In some cases they may be, but in that specific Google ads, if anyone's not familiar with it, it's a 60-second ad where one of the things is the Earth is flat, and they put a question mark, and then they say doctors need borders, and then whatever, bad example, but they have different questions. And then it was, in my opinion, misread that the next ad was taken. They took out the Earth is flat from the next ad, and then, but I'm laughing because sometimes it's, in hindsight, these are simple explanations. The one where they took out the Earth is flat, it was the 30-second version of the ad, and I think that's a more reasonable explanation. Yeah, you're right. People are indoctrinated. If you say the Earth is flat, it doesn't even register. People are like, "What? That's dumb." Like it's so assumed true. If you walk up to someone on the street and go, "Yeah, I don't think anyone has ever been to space," they're like, "What is this? Like a performance art thing or something?" And it's like, they'll go, "Well, maybe the moon landing wasn't." But if you go, "No, like all of it," it's so far outside the realm of normal discourse that it doesn't even register these actual events that are taking place nowadays. Though these psyops, so the ones we're noticing nowadays, and where people are going, this is a faked event. This is not what we're being told as it's being laid out, as the narratives are being laid out with the conspiracies and the spins and the second shooters and stuff like that. When people talk about those in real time, they're absolutely getting censored, because what the spellcasters want to do is create an event, get people afraid, push an agenda, and then cement it into history. It won't cement into history, into people's brains, if people are calling it out in real time and going, "Wait a second, this emperor isn't wearing any clothes at all." If you're not able to say that, you can't point that out. If you're just, "Hey, get out," you can't go on YouTube and say the emperor has no clothes. The emperor is going to walk through, and everyone's going to believe that they wear clothes. It's so bizarre. It's just like, it's completely different things. I think psyops in real time are very different than flat Earth historical, like you say, indoctrination versus actual propaganda.
Yeah, we've got systems in place that are already well and truly working with flat Earth, and they're being established when one of these events happens. So yeah, there is no necessity to have anybody watching over and saying, "No, you can't say that already," because most, if not all, of the flat Earth arguments have had, like I say, a good few hundred years of people arguing the toss and coming up with debunkings, even if they're not necessarily correct. What did interest me, though, that you said a second ago, was that you kind of alluded to them being exactly like that, i.e. pushing the fake curvature narrative deliberately. And I'm gonna get you to expand on it, because in my mind they're just doing that out of instinct. They're hardwired to think it's there, and therefore when they do their research, everything points towards it. They come up with the footage they need, they present it on TV. Nobody's any the wiser, including the producer. But maybe you think differently. Maybe you think there is somebody standing over us and editing and censoring flat Earth.
I think it's both. I think it's a combination of both, where people, what's a news agency going to do? Like Popular Science, they're not going to go, balloon launch raises questions whether the Earth is flat or not. They're going to just push the agenda that, isn't science wonderful? Since we have this balloon launch and this camera, we can see the curvature of the Earth. I think it's a combination of not wanting to look stupid, and in some cases just going along with programming. But what are you going to do? You're not going to go against, like, this science is a belief. Mainstream science is a belief system. So people are going to work within that belief system. When you bring along any other form of truth, I can't see any of these popular science, mainstream media outlets, unless they can spin it, unless they can use someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson or someone to go, "Well, it turns out we've just discovered this new thing that we were mistaken about this, but this is the new thing." And they're going to direct the narrative somewhere else. And I think that's what they're doing with some new fear porn elements that may or may not exist. I think they're trying to spin people into actual conspiracies. They're trying to spin people into storylines with these psyops and shootings. And I think it's really important to realize that none of this is new. The difference is that we can, in real time now, comment on it and disseminate this information. And this stuff has been going on not only around the world forever, even people in North America or Europe who may not think they've been exposed to this stuff on home soil. They think that these deceptions and psyops happen in war zones, they know that they've happened through history. People know that there's false flags. They know that in war zones, there's psychological warfare. What people are starting to realize now though, is that it's here, wherever you are, at all times, and has always been here, but it's never been brought up or exposed as psychological warfare or deception. It's always been exposed. It's assumed that, well, we're different. We've got things right. And it's not something to be paranoid of. It's actually something to smile about it, because it's like, wow, we get to like unravel the greatest mystery that our previous generations of parents and grandfathers probably had no idea they were under these spells. And we get to like turn the tables, shine the mirror back on people and go, we're not going to just wake you up. We're going to blow your minds, because this truth is way better than any movie, any story. You're not going to believe this. And the next generation after you won't believe that we thought those things were real. It's like a complete 180 on reality. But like any sort of psychological revolution or reformation, there's always the danger that it'll be co-opted and steered in a certain direction. So it's important, I think, to be very level-headed and calm. And I mean, not to patronize you, but you seem very open-minded to pretty much anything. And I think your attitude, I mentioned this on my video today, promoting this. I think your attitude specifically of just being level-headed, seeing all the sides, discussing, is the only way forward. Because if we get paranoid or reacting in any way, that will be directed just as much as being afraid of a shooter who probably didn't exist, or afraid of some sort of element of danger coming down. Because I don't think this is dangerous. I think this is exciting, and in some ways probably really more fun and interesting than most people can even imagine at this point.
Yeah, I think we're also left at a distinct advantage, because as a flat earther, there's a term that everyone in the chat will be familiar with. I might as well bring up the chat while we talk about this. But those of us at the tip of the beak can be considered auto-hoaxers. And by that, I mean, when it comes to, let's use NASA as an example, once you see a little bit of deception from NASA, you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. They lose all credibility. Therefore, it's very easy to, before the first frame of a video from NASA, say, yes, fake. There's some form of deception in there. I know it is, without question, before I've even watched the video. And naysayers would say, well, no, you've got to actually look at this NASA footage. And, you roll your eyes and think, well, okay, I can, if you like, look at it and discern where the fakery is for you and point it out to you. But ultimately speaking, for me personally, again, I've turned my back on it. It's, again, in your video before the promo for this show, you were talking about something that I've talked about recently, which is about highlighting deceivers by calling them out. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. It's a double-edged sword, what we do. We may attract the wrong person by jumping up and down and going, look, NASA are fake. But at that stage, you are just around the 3-card Monty table, making a commotion, and that commotion can draw a crowd. Whether or not your commotion or your part of the commotion is to say, don't play the game. But yeah,
it's the 3-card Monty. It's hypnosis. It's leading language. It's these magic tricks. These deceivers are good at what they do. Like, you watch a NASA video or a SpaceX launch, and they go, we're launching this rocket into orbit today. It's going to go to this height. It's going to go to this broadcast altitude. It's going to have this much of a report on the rocket. It's going to come back. And then, so they've painted this picture in your imagination of what's going to happen. And then they induce you with imagery. And then you walk away going, wow, I can't believe I witnessed this rocket launch. But what nobody's asking is, hey, this is all a joke. Like, these guys, they're not telling you that it's a joke. That's what's so funny about it to them. I mean, I'll raise his name, and he causes a lot of friction in the flat Earth worlds. But Math Powerland, in his original video where he's on stage, where he's doing a stand-up show, he goes, I want to talk about the joke that's on you, and he points at the audience, and that's what it is. This is a joke by insiders. This is an inside joke that 99% of the population doesn't know could even be a joke, and has no idea about. It's like the ultimate inside joke. It's inside baseball. It's inside gamesmanship. And the level of jokery and the level of hoaxery that they're doing is it's fascinating. And I think traditionally, anyone who's found out about this stuff would have been sort of illuminated by being brought into these secret societies. usually through a family or some sort of professional or at least contractual military, not just a non-disclosure agreement, but they're going to be brought in by like a blood bond or some sort of, something to make sure that they're not going to spill the beans and let the cat out of the bag on this story. What's happening now is we're looking inside the bag and going, you don't even need to let the cat out of the bag. Like, it's already out. We can see that it's going to get out, and we're flipping the table on it. So what we're doing is we're going, this used to be a joke for all you guys, and now we're taking it and we're going to show it to everyone else. And we're going to point out that you're essentially lying and doing a joke. But what I mean by this is we're going to flood the playing field with this information. But traditionally, anyone who found out about this had, blood bonds or contractual or family obligations to not tell anyone else. They would have been guilted into not speaking up. They would have been fascinated by this information. If you find out about a joke and it's like, shh, don't tell anyone, you're not going to want to. You're going to be like, whoa, what else can we do? Let's have some more fun with this. This is street theater. We can essentially toy with people on a certain level. And while I think most truthers or flat earthers will see that as deceitful and horrible and despicable and all these good words, it's easy to understand under the conditions of you're not allowed to talk about it. So you might do a little internal mental Stockholm syndrome where you go, well, I'm not gonna talk about it, but I kind of want to be part of it now. So you can see it as like a creative endeavor. And that's one of the things that, in order to combat this, instead of just only exposing these deceptions, I think some flat earthers and truthers should start creating deceptions of our own, fooling a bunch of people, and then explaining what we did, showing people how the magic trick works to further let people understand how easy it is to fool people. Not that we should deceive people, but understand that if you're going to be skeptical, don't just be skeptical about Fox News versus CNN. No, be skeptical about anything all the time in a funny way. And don't be afraid to say bullshit. Like, if someone reveals information to you, just be like, well, I don't buy it. And if you think I'm heartless because I think I'm saying that I don't think anyone died, I don't think anyone shot, I don't think there was even a shooter, that's not being heartless. Being wrong about such a thing, it could be seen as having no soul or having zero empathy. The auto hoaxing is better than auto believing, because auto belief is where people get fooled. You're essentially being toyed with if you're auto believing. You can essentially be fooled if you're auto believing. If you're auto hoaxing, you're not going to be fooled by anything. You're going to build up your own version of reality. But it's hard. You have to fight off the attacks saying, you're evil, you're heartless. What about the families? What about all the scientists? You're saying it's hard to deal with. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Had never been exposed to this level of trolling and attack. But after a while, you realize it's all just people are reacting via their programming. It's not an actual personal attack. They're just lashing out because they want to show that they're morally good people type thing.
You don't think there's a danger that by automatically saying that something's a hoax, you can be put in a position by people who are definitely controlling the narrative to call out something that's potentially real just to make you look awful?
I think it's a certain danger, of course. You could see it as a danger. But look what people are auto-hoaxing. They're not auto-hoaxing real events. They're auto-hoaxing ones where there is evidence or at least a probability that there could be deception. No one's auto-hoaxing that someone's on the side of the road with a flat tire. They're not going, that's not a flat tire. They're just trying to get me to pull over to then rob me. And like, sure, that's probably happened before, but I'll pull over. I'll help someone change their tire. Like, auto-hoaxers are still helping grandmas cross the street. Auto-hoaxers are calling out. And yeah, there's a group rush. When an auto-hoaxer is auto-hoaxing, they're usually following not peer pressure, but peer leading. You won't see auto-hoaxers calling out random things. They're going to call out specific ones and then really pick them apart. There's a really random one in Canada. We had this guy, not in the federal parliament building, but in a provincial parliament building. He came in with a rifle and supposedly shot some people. This was back in the 80s. I went back through the video footage and I said, I don't buy it. Like, this looks fake. I posted that video and it got taken down right away because I think not only had nobody talked about that being a hoax, it was deemed as graphic content, but there was nothing in there other than a guy holding a gun and firing blanks. It was, so what I'm trying to say is the first person who auto hoaxes something, or the first group of people, they can be painted to look stupid. But when a lot of people start to do it and assemble some evidence, it really leads to there's a bit of safety in numbers, and it's kind of how human psychology works.
Okay.
Another one that's never really been covered is the station nightclub fire, the Great White, the band. People talk about the Bataclan, and they're talking about the V word one that just happened recently, but they're not talking about some of these older ones, which is fine. I don't think we should focus on the past, but I think understanding just how many of these there's been through history, it starts to really change your perception of what tactics will be required to prevent them from happening in the future, and essentially warping our daughters' brains. Like, I don't want my daughter afraid of going to a concert because some guy shot up a crowd that it didn't happen. That's not acceptable for me to have my offspring living in fear of an event that didn't happen, because not only is it crying wolf and actually removing real, true empathy from a real event, it's creating a false sense of fear, and it's actually taking the focus off true fears. Like, if you're standing on the edge of a cliff, don't fall over. Like, we can't live afraid of everything, but there are good fears to have. If it's a cold night and you go out and you can die from exposure, you can put on a jacket, put on some clothes. These are real things to be afraid of. But these social fears, these media fears, these are the ones to walk out for. But as this ties back in, I'm going to tie it back into Flat Earth, because I know this is Flat Earth United. It's something it's not really essentially something to be afraid of. And I know I think a lot of people, when they get into all of this stuff, they get afraid. They get more afraid in these conspiracy truther worlds than they would be if they hadn't known this. I think it's the opposite. I think about the people who are deceiving you. They're the ones who are afraid. When you expose that someone's lying to a large group of people, they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to be found out. They're afraid that they can be discredited. So in opposition to being personally afraid, I say stand up, stand tall, get people to see what you're seeing. And there's no way we can't win this aspect of the psychological mind, or of showing people a better version of reality. I came up with this concept last night, an enemy of the state of mind. And I think that we're like perceptionally treasonous. We are causing treason. Like, we're an enemy of the state of perception. And I think that's what it is. I don't think it really comes down to actual structural reformation and storming the Bastille, which, if you actually research, it looks like it was a controlled opposition operation, which sounds insane. But you can storm people's minds. You can storm someone's brain with an idea, and their perception will be able to see through the spell, and that tactic will never work on them ever again. Like, you always hear about the grandparents who get screwed over by an email scam from, my name is Sir Timbuktu, dear Sir Madam, I'm from Africa, I'm in France. Could you please send me some money so I can get out? I'll send you more. Kids aren't getting fooled by this. It's the older generation. So kids aren't going to get fooled by this stuff. They're going to learn about psyops and false flags and stuff, if not in their history classes, through their older brothers and through their buddies at school. And they're going to look at reality and go, wait a second, I don't need to automatically believe what this thing is telling me. Let's actually analyze this, break it apart, take the good, throw away the bad, and move on. And if anyone tries to come at me with an email scam, I'm going to be like, nope, and just delete it. So
it's much better. You've got a paradigm scam in the case of the heliocentric model, and it is terrifying. That's probably the single greatest feeling of relief that you can get, in my humble view, is that you're not going to get hit by meteors, that you're not, that there's not this infinite vastness above our heads. It's actually extremely limited what's up. I mean, maybe we'll get into discussing some of the models, and infinite plane being one of them. It may be that you can transpose some of those ideas. You can transpose what was infinitely high into infinitely far out. I don't necessarily buy that, because I don't know. Maybe not. It's nice to think about these things, but certainly it's nice to not be terrified. Not that I was particularly terrified, but I kind of was. And if you think about where you are in the heliocentric model, that makes you feel quite insignificant. You do feel like a speck of nothing. It makes you, that's the word I'm looking for, it makes you nihilistic.
I agree. I agree that the whole being seeing this doesn't really matter, it's not a big deal. And I have to say, though, in the same way that you say you weren't really afraid As much as we're a small speck of dust in this infinite universe and we don't really mean anything, I always took that to mean, and I understand the kind of contemporary flat earther view that it's better to not have that mentality. But I always took it to mean, wow, this thing that I'm worrying about right now, whether my car is going to get towed or whether or not I'll get this second date with a girl or whatever I was worrying about at the time. If I thought about those things, I put it in perspective and said, oh, it doesn't really mean much. So it's not like, it's almost like a de-dramification of the false things that people often are dramatic about. And I can see how that goes both ways. But the whole fear thing is amazing, because if you throw away nuclear weapons, and if you throw away these asteroids, and if you throw away so many of the things that are used to control people through eternal fear, essentially, not only are there less things to be afraid of, the tactics that those people are using to control you won't work. You can't be directed the same way. And that opens you up to a whole new paradigm of inductively observing the world and I think getting actual truths, not through YouTube videos or hearsay, but actual truth through observing stuff. And this happened last week. I was in rural Canada on a farm, and I was staring up at the moon, and I did this test. I went sort of behind the tree. Here's a perfect prop for a tree. So if that light behind me was the moon, right back there, and the tree was here, I put my hand here behind the tree, and then I moved it out into the moonlight. And you can feel, if you go into moonlight under the right conditions, you can feel a cool energy coming from it. And it could be some sort of electromagnetic, electrostatic energy that only happens in moonlight. But it was very distinct between where the moon shadow was and the moonlight. And this is, people talk about moonlight cooling, and I don't think it works under all conditions. It was in the moon, it had been full, and it was at about 80% waning, I guess. And it was about 10 degrees, 11 degrees Celsius, so about 50 Fahrenheit. There was no wind. It was perfectly silent, and I could feel something I was standing on, or it could have been the ground material that I was standing on reacting with this as well. But not only that, not only feeling a cooling moonlight, I could hear the moon. There's a sound that the moon makes. And so if you're working from North Korea has nukes, there are space stations going around, heliocentrism, the very idea that the moon could have an energy from it, a cooling energy, and a sound would never enter your brain. So under that paradigm where you're in a position to actually feel and observe these things, you wouldn't, because your brain will never allow it to happen. It will think that, wow, the moon's so far away, and there's buggy tracks up there, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and all these guys went to the moon, and only America, and it was a different era back then. I wish we still had these Cold War rockets and rivalry. Like it's like, no, like the moon has a cooling energy. Why? And then second to that, like, what are we going to do about it? Like, if I want to find out, I want to know what that is. And if people on the face of this earth currently, flat earther, ball earther, heliocentric, geocentric, whatever, know about that, have that information, and they're hiding it on purpose, that's what I want to expose. These are these like eternal truths that people have probably known forever. And I think when you get to the tip of the pyramid, the tip of that beak, in these secret societies, that's their secret information. This is the real mystery schools. I think they know. But as much as people know about many of these things, there's also the aspect that I think a lot of people don't know about any of it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. But what people do is they create a very good narrative and a very good story that sells well. So it's a combination of both. I think people know about some of this stuff, and I think some of it is just pure mystery, but it's better to provide an answer than to say, I don't know.
Yeah, but again, my concern when you talk about people like the mystery schools or NASA is that, back to credibility, if they've deceived you, certainly if their main purpose is to hold up a deception, then even if they do know, you could never trust them. So short of, you're not going to put them on a rack and torture the truth out of them. That's never going to happen. So you can't really appeal to that authority. Well, you can, of course, but I just wouldn't.
Well, I don't think it's like, I don't think we really need to stop them. It's just understanding what's happening. Like if you're in an Italian street and you're walking along and there's some guys at a table set up and there's dudes in leather jackets looking around all sketchy like this, and there's cards on a table, you can be pretty much assured that that's a scam. So when some astronaut sophist comes along with his leather jacket and his thing, and they're doing the like double horn ceremonies before the launch, like I'll point at it and go, this is bullshit. Like, you can believe it, but I'm going to expose these people for what they're actually doing, and then move on, because you can't stop people from doing this. Freedom of expression, freedom of speech, it's going to carry on, but the people who see through it, I think, are going to become far more numerous than currently. The idea that literally billions of people won't understand these deceptions is completely irrational to me. Everyone's going to figure this stuff out eventually.
Yeah, well, we have freedom of discernment. It's just many people don't have it. That's the problem. And it's not for... I think everybody's pretty much equal in their ability to do it. It's just the brainwashing is that good. I have a lot of admiration for the heliocentric deception. I think it's very clever. You know, the fact that even back to the shills aspect of it, the fact that we can be in, you know, you and I can be of the mindset that there's somebody nefarious being paid to shut us up, and really it's just another fellow human being that wants to disagree, but we can be of that mindset. That's a testament to how good the programming is, how well we've been brainwashed. It is pretty cool, you know, and looking at it, dissecting it, examining it is equally as fascinating as the fact that the Earth is flat. You know, the fact that we have a completely different world around us than we've been presented with on the TV screen, I might add, is ultimately the most fascinating thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. But then you turn around and look behind you and go, well, how have we got to this point? Well, through this deception. Well, how does that work? That's pretty cool. You know, a lot of flat earthers will shy away from this. I mean, before you join the behind the scenes feed, I was explaining to the audience about banning trolls, and many of them may actually be on their journey to flat earth happiness. You just don't know. Most of them are pretty miserable and angry, and I know that I'm not, and many of the flat earthers echo my feelings in this regard. So you think, well, if you ban them, this is going to be a bit lengthy, but I'll give you another example. There was a car video that was talking about hatred. You know, it's the same across any community in YouTube. It's not just flat earth. Many people get this. And he was essentially saying that if somebody came up to you at a car meet and started saying, oh, you've got a really cool whiz-banger there. In other words, you come up with this nonsense term and look stupid. You've got, as the car guy, the enthusiast, or in the example for us, the flat earther, you've got two options. You can ridicule that person and point out how idiotic they are, or embrace them and, you know, give them a bit of support, and hopefully they'll, you know, understand or see things from your point of view or examine more. The only downside is we're pre-programmed to ridicule the idea. We hear those two words, flat earth, and instinctively go, no! It's already been figured out! You can't have that view. You know, no need for shills, no need for government-paid agents, you know, no need for censorship. You know, most of my videos on flat earth are still monetized. You know, there are a handful that have been hit by the, whatever they call it, apocalypse, but most of them, I'm monetizing the hell out of them. And why not? You know, there's people in my super chat donating to me as we do this show. So it's not like I'm being censored whilst saying the earth is flat. Now, I'm not for 1 second suggesting that that means it's a psyop and we're being co-opted. Far from it. You know, it just means that this is where I'm leading this, a system, a well-established system, you know, and the deception within the hoaxes, they're not established. You know, they need to control those tightly and carefully. We don't need that control. Or I don't think we need that control. You know, we can happily push this idea. We only have to battle against the existing program from the system that's already, I feel, crumbling. Well, I'll lead it into a question. Do you think that the heliocentric system is in any way failing?
Yeah, because like I got a request from Wikipedia today, a direct message from Jimmy Wales. It's important. Your voice is important to us, and they're encouraging me to donate money and to support Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia has tons of good information, but it is a frontline, A-class, top-tier gatekeeper. If in years past I've sent them $5 or $10, I'm not sending them a cent because they're actively narrative controlling all of these hoaxes and psyops. If you go look at school shootings in the US, the data, they're going with the mainstream story. They're not actually critiquing any of this stuff, and they lock these things down. So yes, it is going to start failing faster and faster, because I'm not going to not only give them money, I'm going to create content that directly contradicts what their gatekeeping tactics are saying. Not to prove a point, but just to, it's changing. I think, hang on a second, this cat's going crazy.
Good, entertaining watching your cat jumping all over the place.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like this. People have always viewed the world differently. This idea that science can provide the real narrative, I think, is going to fail quickly, and people will fall into their own different camps. And you see this within flat Earth. You see people that believe in an ice wall. You see people that believe in a Pac-Man model. They believe in a larger globe. Some people believe it's a sphere, but it operates as a flat surface. That some people believe there's a dome. Some people believe people believe in all these things, but we're actually exploring and we're looking for evidence to sort of support, not our claim, but support the idea that we're not on an actual spinning ball. So once you start getting to the idea where, okay, it's okay to question the normal narrative, there's all these other ones that are going to sprout up like mushrooms. And I think it will be more acceptable to have a unique, even personal view of how the universe and the world works in the future. And it's going to get further cemented into society's brains through augmented reality and things like this. This technology is coming. It's not going to be, I mean, think about this. I walk down the street all the time wearing these. You see people talking into their headphones, carrying phones. It's not out of the ordinary. 30 years ago, if you did that, you look like a lunatic. Maybe you're listening to a Walkman or whatever, but the next generation of kids is going to have elements of, transhumanism maybe, but more just augmented reality, where I can see a video feed in here while I'm walking. Those video feeds and these different sort of personal versions of reality are going to be reinforced by augmented reality. So it's a bizarre mixture of, on one hand, open to new programming, which could manipulate brains, but also creativity. So you could design a building and you could put it in sort of like Google SketchUp, and then you could put it in a street and you could send it to your friend. And when they walk down the street, they see the building that you see. And maybe it has a smiley face on it. So it's almost like shared imagination. And I think once this goes to a technological level where everyone can share this stuff, it'll be totally acceptable to have different views of the way the world works. This homogenous mainstream perception that we've been, I think, for the last few generations, specifically since NASA and the space agencies, I won't even get into the religious side of it, but they've created a religion, a de facto one world view of how we view the world. And I think that those days are over, and it's going to get a lot more interesting from here out. The creativity that people are going to bring forward to not only questioning the landscape and the model, but also making it sort of a micro interpretation that it's somewhat private, I think is really it's quite fantastic. I think it's a good hearkening back to things that we always had when we lived in a small corner of the world and we didn't have any media and we only had our neighbors. They say that they started the space stuff in Europe because Americans thought that space travel was fantasy. Now the common read, this is back in the 30s and 40s, 50s, they were trying to sell space travel to Americans and they just didn't buy it. Now the common read on this would be, especially from a Canadian perception, would be like, oh, Americans are stupid. They wouldn't believe anything if you told it to them. And I totally disagree. I think Americans saw through people trying to lie to them. And in Europe, with the more balkanization of languages, it was easier to kind of sell a certain nation on these sort of space myths as a reality. And Americans didn't actually really buy into it until you brought in the experts, the Germans, who sold people on it to sell them on that one world view, precluding the essentially NASA JPL takeover of the American worldview in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I think Americans had a much more, this is just blanket statement, people all over the world, but Americans specifically at that time had a greater sense of personal imagination to how the way the world worked. And I think we're going to see again, those days are going to come back, and we're going to look back as this era as a quaint era, and the end of the line will be people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and the ISS and all this stuff. It'll be seen as a silly stage play that happened and fooled generations.
I think you got the two words you used most often in that were belief and reality. And those are the two things that have been hijacked. And when you talk about reality, often people will be describing what is theory and conjecture and not reality at all. They are essentially beliefs. And people don't understand what is beliefs. You listed them off. You know, people want to believe there's an ice wall. It's like, yeah, good for you. You know, it doesn't really mean much. And the same goes for reality. And I'm going to check you on this. You're probably not going to like me for doing this, but tough. You said augmented. And I know what you mean when you use that word. You mean that in the case of a phone, you could literally hold up your phone and what was on the screen would have another layer, you know, on top of it with a different world. You know, it might tell you what's in the shop that you're looking at through the camera lens. That's what you mean by augmented. But I would say that we already have an augmented reality. What we have, instead of it being on a phone screen and portable and walked around and you know, rendered in 3D real time, we have the television set. That is our augmented reality. You know, what is presented on that 2D gobble box is ultimately a bullshit narrative from the news or a bullshit reality in terms of what they tell us the bigger picture is when we look at our world, because we can't. You know, it's back to Math Powerland and his exceptionally good point when he was in front of the audience. He's essentially pointing them to the blue marble pincher and saying, how the F would you know what it looks like? And that's the bottom line here. You don't. You just think you do. You just believe that you do. You believe you know what Earth looks like. You know, when I get into sort of tete-a-tetes with people like Mr. Grimm, a great videographer, he's putting out some great material, exceptionally knowledgeable. But when it comes to his belief in the Earth, there's no getting around the fact that he has to, like most of the intellectually honest detractors in the flat Earth community, accept that NASA aren't credible. You know, and that's what we've got. That's our proof. These bullshit pictures. And they're no good to anybody. You know, they aren't real. That's not where we live. Now, does that mean that I can discount based solely on that we don't live on a sphere? Well, no, that would definitely be a non sequitur conclusion. You know, at the opening of the show, it kind of sounded like that's... I know there's far more to it for you and me and everybody else when you say, well, I saw that NASA were faking the curve and there's obviously lots of fisheye lens fakery, therefore the Earth is flat. No, there's far more to it than that. But ultimately speaking, you can chuck out a lot of what's on the TV, what NASA present, as completely, well, incredible.
I've been there. I've done it. I've worked on TV shows. I've been a subject where we've purposely fooled people to just for dramatic effect. And like everything I did with the One Red Paperclip story was 100% truthful. Every single thing with that story. But then after the story, they would talk about different elements of it. And I wound up on a TV show in Japan while the Paperclips thing was still happening. It was in May of 2006. And they pretended to the audience there, the studio audience, they had myself and my girlfriend on a video feed to the audience. And they pretended to the audience in that TV show studio that we were back in Canada, and they had like a pennant on the wall and like a baseball glove and like whatever. It looked like I was dressed like this. So it looked like America, it looked like Canada. And they're like, oh, hey, well, welcome to the show. And we're very happy. Maybe you should come to Japan sometime. And they, ha ha ha. And I said, well, I'd love to come to Japan. And they said, well, why don't you come right now? And I said, right now? Okay. And the audience laughed, and I walked off screen, and then it cut to a large shot of the audience where myself and my girlfriend walked out from behind the stage, and the audience was like, oh, and then it cut to a commercial. But it's about fooling, this trickery, these magic tricks, these perception deceptions are what it's all about. And TV is all about this. If you actually, and that's what's so fascinating for me about YouTube, it's so much better than TV because it's individual perspective and ideas versus canned reality and canned deceptions that sell well. I'm much more interested in like a video with one view where the person has a very interesting thing to say than an incredibly well shot chase scene in a movie that with fake explosions and like the street. I mean, I know I've been to so many of these cities. I'm watching it and I'm going, if you turned right there, it would go down the hill, not up the hill. And it's I know it's fun to just lose your reality and have a suspension of disbelief to follow the story. But when you see through the deceptions, they don't work anymore.
You've given me a really nice segue there into One Red Paperclip. So I said at the beginning of the show we'd get into it. I thought we'd get into it much sooner, but a good chunk of Flat Earth. I love that. So brilliant. But can we talk a little bit about One Red Paperclip? So obviously the story is going to involve one red paperclip. So start there. You've got one red paperclip. What did you do with your one red paperclip?
This is a patch of the paperclip, but it was this size. It was just a regular little red paperclip. And I was about like half a mile from where I am right now. It was in East Vancouver. I took the paperclip, posted it on Craigslist in the barter section and said, does anybody want to trade a paperclip for something bigger than a paperclip? And then later that night, 2 girls called and said, yeah, let's meet up in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven. So we meet in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven. I trade a paperclip for a pen shaped like a fish. And then later that day, I traded it for a doorknob. I traded the doorknob for a camping stove, traded the camping stove for an electric generator. I won't go through all the trades because it really gets complicated and diverts. But if you want to watch the full story, go to TEDx.
Please do, because
you want the whole story?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I want every single trade because I know the list, but there's some
if anybody
stuff in
wants
there.
the visuals, go to the TEDx Vienna video, and I go through it all. It's got like 3 million views on it now. So, anyways, I got up to the camping stove. I traded that for I traded the camping stove for a generator and a case of a beer keg, and I'm totally mishmashing here. So I wound up with an electric generator after I traded the camp stove for it. I traded the generator for a beer keg and a neon Budweiser sign. I traded. I usually have visuals with me. I traded that for a snowmobile. This guy's worst snowmobile. Traded the snowmobile for a trip for 2 to Yak, BC. All expenses paid trip for 2 to the Canadian Rockies. Traded that for a giant box truck cube van. Traded the cube van for a recording contract. Recording contract went for a year of rent in Phoenix in a house. Traded a year of rent for an afternoon with Alice Cooper. An afternoon with Alice Cooper for a Kiss snow globe. This like little snow globe thing, which people thought it was crazy. But that was the one time that I had another trade lined up off the back of it. And that was with Corbin Burnson, a Hollywood guy who was filming a movie. And I traded my Kiss snow globe for a role in a Hollywood film, and Corbin collects snow globes. So for him, this wasn't just any regular snow globe. This was the Kiss snow globe. And I traded the role in a Hollywood film in the movie that Corbin was making for a house in Kipling, Saskatchewan, Canada. And the house in Kipling, the town of Kipling owned it. And we moved into the house, had a housewarming party, and the town held a live auditions for the role in the film. The guy who won the role in the film was 19 years old, had just graduated from high school and was working for minimum wage at the Bottle Depot. And then 3 months later, he's down in LA with Corbin working on this movie. The media was focused on the story because it was a series. It was a year long, and every 12 every month or so 12 times during that year, there was a trade, and it turned into an event. And it just slot in at the end of the news hour where it was like, cat stuck in a tree, got saved, and then the paperclip guy makes another trade. It was one of these feel-good stories, and it really propelled people. It caught into the collective imagination, and it was amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And everything, I bet my life on it. When people say, oh, the Earth's flat, and sure people didn't get shot there. Oh, the paperclip thing's fake too. And I just stare them right in the face and go, that story was true. Talk to anyone involved, and I bet my life on it. And it's very different than you see this reasoning when people go, oh, well, if that's fake, well, then your thing must be fake. It's like, no. And I dare you to find 1 ounce of like fakery in there. And it's like, no one will, of course, but like that's the conviction, and that sense of conviction that I feel. You see it when people are duping. They don't have that sense of conviction. And trade your paper clips. I wrote a book about it. Really good book. You can find it all over the internet. But what a story. That story was so fun to do. It was a project in real time. But then I wrote this book, and it got translated, and then I started getting invited to speak in front of crowds, and man, it just carried on. Like I travel all over speaking about this. And at the time, it's like, what do you mean write a book and speak about this? I was just going and making trades and having a fun personal experience. I didn't own a house, and I wanted to own a house. It was very pure. It was like, I want to have a house one day. And that's the way it happened.
I've got to say, bravo. Because absolutely superb. That to me is one of the best stories ever. Just fantastic.
it sounds like it was made up. That's the craziest thing. And then when I meet people, sometimes they'll go, "Oh, hey, what's your name?" And I'm like, "Oh, Kyle. And what do you do?" And they pull it out of me that I did the paperclip thing. Going, hey,
when you get to the Kiss snow globe. When I first heard the story,
they pull it out, and I go, yeah, I did this thing, and they go, "I've heard about that. Well, that was real," and I'm like, "Yeah."
The bit that always gets me is the Kiss snow globe, because when you see that in the list, you know, you're getting up to some pretty bulky stuff by then, you know, physically quite large and weighty, you know, snowmobiles and trucks and things. Then you get this snow globe, and you're like, you look at it and you go, what the, you know, I know Kiss stuff is, the memorabilia stuff, it gets pretty wild, but I looked at the picture of it, and I was like, yeah, it's plastic, and what? Why is that at this end of the list? What's going on there? But like you say, it ended up being the, you know, that one must-have thing for a guy producing a movie, and without it, you wouldn't be in the house you're in.
Yeah, and then he spun that whole thing that he traded for the Kiss snow globe into, wait a second, you're collecting snow globes? And he's like, yeah, I'm collecting snow globes. I have the most on Earth, and I want more. And I even put it in the book. You can send Corbin Burnson snow globes. He's received hundreds of snow globes, people just sending them to him. So it became a thing where trading for that one snow globe, he's accumulated like 7,000 or 8,000 of these things now. It's fascinating and bizarre / creepy at the same time. It's equal amounts of both. He's a really cool guy. Everyone I traded with was awesome. The whole experience was almost universally positive, 100%. It's very different playing around in this like much more tumultuous world of flat Earth, and really challenging people's beliefs versus going, here's something fun you can be part of. Let's go have a party for a year kind of thing.
Yeah. I also saw, for any of the Brits watching, you were on Richard and Judy, were you not?
Yeah, that was so bizarre. I was on Richard and Judy, and then, I mean, I met people in the UK that I'd heard about in other books and read about, and I just went to dinner with them and met them and did all these things, and I was just like, this is so weird. Like, you can access these worlds. It's not like you're prevented from going into them. And I'm on Richard and Judy, and people like have heard about these guys, and it was just this, I mean, a pretty campy little interview. And we went out to the streets and in Piccadilly Circus, and I traded from an umbrella up to, I don't even remember what I did. It was this, and I think the producer of that clip said, well, just fake a few trades and then we'll go back home. And I'm like, I'm not gonna fake trades. Like, I'm gonna trade with people. Like, the TV network wanted me to fake it, essentially. That was very bizarre.
Yeah, whatever gets the point across in the shortest amount of time, with the least amount of production money spent.
Yeah, well, and like, talk about like blood rituals and like things that you hear about in the mainstream media. I wound up at one point on stage with Alice Cooper, and I traded him this giant red paperclip. You can find the video if you go red paperclip Alice Cooper. But I traded him a giant red paperclip, and then he traded me a giant weather balloon. And then he came and popped the weather balloon, and it was full of like blood. And then you start thinking about, and everyone I tell that story to in an audience of 500 people has a visceral reaction, like, blood, gross. And I heard Alice Cooper talking about how when people come to his show in the first 5 rows, they'll get sprayed with blood, and you can see people genuinely afraid. And you start taking that event, that blood being sprayed all over the crowd, and go, wait a second, in the context of magic tricks and stuff, like maybe what's going on there. So I don't want to ruin Alice Cooper's magic trick, but maybe consider that it might not be the type of blood your brain is initially thinking. That's the power of magic. He's a magician. He's a performer and entertainer, and he's been doing this for decades. And watching someone at work like essentially orchestrate a crowd for 3 hours from behind the scenes. It was like Wayne's World. I was like on Wayne's World, the movie, like hanging out with the guy that it was being in Wayne's World. It was like Forrest Gump in reverse. It was like being part of these worlds, that whole red paperclip story. So just when someone says something and you have a reaction, you might be being fooled for certain ways. But
well, my introduction, just to round out the one red paperclip bit. So the first one, or it might have been the first video I watched from you, was off the back of IPS, and he pointed out that you were doing a bit of activism using what we have in the UK is called Free Cycle, whereas you have the free pages on Craigslist, and you essentially had put up a giveaway Can you tell us a little bit about that? If you know which, you've done a lot of videos, so you might not know. If you need a bit more hints, just tell me.
I remember the exact one. I remember your comment. You're like, this is. I think you used the word brilliant. You may have used the word brilliant, but I think you guys have Gumtree as well in the UK. I'm not sure if that's another one, but yeah, free section. I just posted a book. I posted a book that said, you know what? I didn't post the book. The one that you commented on. I posted this dresser, this like chest of drawers or something like that. I painted it on the side of it. What did I say? Flat Earth is real. And then I put it out in the street. And then I took a picture of this dresser painted with Flat Earth is real on the side and posted it in the free section of Craigslist in Vancouver. And the free section of Craigslist in Vancouver sent me back all these responses. Yeah, right, buddy. And like some angry responses. It got taken down for spam. I put it up again. And an hour later, that dresser was gone. Someone came and grabbed it. So probably, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. And I actually have an incredible, I've focused on the free section of Craigslist in a way that I won't get into right now, but it's really high, incredibly high level. I bet 2,000 people saw that listing that said Flat Earth is real in an hour. And it's one of these ways that you can very subliminally flat smack people and you can get the information out. And another thing that I did here in Vancouver was the Chris Hadfield on the sidewalk thing, where Chris Hadfield was in the Orpheum Theater, which is a big theater. And I went to the sidewalk before his presentation and just put up a ladder with some signs on it that said, Chris Hadfield is lying to you. Spacewalks are filmed in a pool. It's all just a magic trick. And just stood there and spray painted over my painting of the moon man with fake AF and just filmed the entire thing. People coming up, talking to me. And I just stood there and talked to people for about an hour. Most of the reactions were completely like, yeah, right. This is crazy. But about 40% of the people were really open-minded. Like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean it's a magic trick? It's like, oh, really? I've never heard about this. And one guy got really triggered, really upset, and he went and ripped down the sign and rode off on his bike. But I mean, interacting with people on the streets is very different, and I'd like to do more of it. The reason I haven't is just because I've been focusing on baby stuff on all the nice days that I can get out there. But I think if you stand your ground and you're calm and you act normal and you say like, no, it looks like it's all fake. The way that people won't get triggered and angry. They'll go, wait a second. This person seems calm, measured. It looks like they're either, wait, is this a trick? Am I getting punked? Or maybe they do have something. So if you were to hand people a brochure or a flyer or some literature that they could take home and look at, I think we could get through very easily on a very high level, high order to people outside the echo chamber of online flat earth. So I know IPS is really big on activism and creating things. And one of the goals of FEMA camp coming up in Denver in 2 weeks will be to create brochures and things like this to actually physically hand out to people. Because I think once you see the information presented in a way that is pretty reasonable, a lot of this stuff is self-evident, and it's more just like, oh, whoa, we've all been fooled for a long time.
Right. I mean, one of the things I did want to plug before we round out the main show is your channel and some of the things that you've been doing on your main channel, because you don't seem to get censored and you are talking about some pretty controversial stuff on your channel. So is there a trick to that?
No, I got a copyright strike. I don't think I can live stream on there right now. I don't talk about it. I don't like to draw attention to it, but I think I have 2 or 3 channels going. I've had 3 or 4 strikes in total. About 4 videos. I've had videos taken down, but not strikes given, where I think they gave me a strike, but then they pulled the strike back, but the video stays down. So I'm not that I'm nervous of doing these things. I think it's more important to get the ideas out there, save the videos, create torrents, load them to multiple sites. And if they only get 50 views or 100 views ever, that's fine. It's better that the information's out there than holding yourself back. On people's mainline channel, it might not be the best place to do that if your goal is to get more information out to a larger audience. So what you could do is you could point a link to go here. You can get the torrent here, download the video directly. And I understand where it's a trade-off between mainstreaming and mainlining the information on a larger channel with more subs versus the obscure stuff. And I encourage anyone who has anything really obscure, really out there, potentially revelatory, just to record it and get it out, email it to people. I mentioned torrents again. I don't think that I'm guilty as well, but I don't think Flat Earth is taking advantage of the fact that you can get around censorship through torrents or through blockchain networks. And one thing that, what's it called? BitChute is, I think it automatically, if you set up BitChute to your main channel or to any channel, it will automatically repeat via, it'll syndicate through BitChute, but it'll automatically save those videos. I actually hadn't saved the video of Denis Lortie where it was, I think it might be a hoax, I'm not so sure, where he apparently shot up the provincial parliament building in Quebec in the 80s. That was taken down. I didn't have the video anymore, but I went to BitChute and it was still there. So it's a certain safeguard. And I guess if you have a video that might be a little bit edgy or whatever that you think might be censored, find a way to get it out no matter what. And that's my main thing. I think Crow 777 is at the absolute front of this right now. And he's causing a wake of people's videos getting taken down. And there's you know, PK and guys like this have gone through this already, but Crow's standing up and he's saying, I don't give a damn. I'm going to get the information out. And if I have to do it on my own server, my own network, so be it. But what we can do on the backside of that is, with permission, of course, take that information, those videos, those audio files, and throw them into videos up on YouTube. Because YouTube, while it's good to sort of snuff out the beast, I think it's important to get the information out there. I would have never found Crow if it wasn't for YouTube. So anything that we can do on side channels, back channels, new logins, if you need to, get an IP, a VPN type situation and upload things through to a very obscure channel and just link to it. I mean, if they start pulling down things for links, that's a whole other level. But it looks like there's BitChute and a lot of blockchain enabled censorship, much more resistant to Big Daddy YouTube. So it's a fine line though, because if you just push, you take your finger and you poke it right in the eye of the beast, it's going to shut you down quickly. So there's a bit of a nuance and dance that has to take place. But get the info out. That's my main thing.
Yeah, I saw Crow talking to ODD today, and he was again focusing on reality and saying, you know, the things that we should be using to track time, the thing that actually dictates what's going on in terms of time, we don't use. You know, we use time zones. That's it.
Right out there.
Shining thing in the sky that we generally ignore and pay attention to what a shiny, spiky disc on a weatherman's screen says instead. But yeah, one last subject that I did want to cover again. Sorry, I've said this, we were going to round out, but yeah, just one more thing, which was about iconoclasm and how you addressed Dell in this regard. So you recently were, I don't know how recently, maybe it wasn't that recent, but you were addressing Dell and his presentation style. And it's something that you were kind of echoing the sentiments of IPS when he was talking about Patricia Steer in terms of how we can present this information to people in a better way. And off the back of that, maybe you can talk about your recent interview. I know you got a tweet and joined. Well, I won't lead you too much. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Which recent interview? That's I'm.
Oh right, is there more than one?
Well, the one on the radio network.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, no. In terms of iconoclasm, it's one of these things where if someone puts up information in a way that can be ridiculed and you can have fun and jest with, I say go for it all the time, and you have to have fun with these things. I've made some points about Dell. I like the guy. I think he's really good. What really confused me with him was when he started attacking IPS for coming out of nowhere and who are you to say these things? And I'm like, what? This guy's good. He's got good information. The attitude of questioning someone where they came from, drifting into paranoia, I was just calling that out. I absolutely love his street interviews, and I was making the real point, and this reversely hits close to home because my name is Kyle MacDonald. It's a very Scottish name, and you've got a guy in Scotland who he has a very thick accent. Most people in North America won't easily understand his accent. It's not a question on the guy and his tactics. In pure legibility, mental legibility, he isn't the best guy to get these ideas out there. And that's just an obvious statement. This is like someone speaking with a quiet voice in a loud room. People won't hear them. And that's, I don't really think that's arguable. It's not a question on anything with any of his ideas or any of his presentation style or anything. I think that's just an unfortunate fact of the matter linguistically. And I'm not going to try and tell the guy speak more clear, any of that stuff. Live your own life, live the way you want. But I think that's a legitimate observation on the guy. The whole devolving into camps is an interesting thing. People are like fans of this guy or that guy. I say I'm fans with everyone. And until someone actually directly hits me wrong in terms of drama, I'm pretty much on board. With the iconoclasm aspect of it, though, I think it's good. It's healthy to be iconoclastic and not to build anyone up too big in your brain as the end all be all. I think constantly ripping on people in a jestful manner is a good way to keep people in check and good way to prevent egos from building. I've been very focused on mimetic iconoclasm and taking things that people hold holy and just essentially like putting a beak on it or something stupid. And if this beak, this Pepe patch triggers people, then good. The whole point is this is a silly thing. This is based off of Pepe the Frog. I don't know, but I believe it was Hoosier Flatty put this beak on. It was done in like MS Paint, and it arose out of nowhere. This thing now became a de facto symbol that people hate. There's people in Flat Earth that are like, this is wrong, this is bad. And I don't really care. It's just a silly penguin. The fact that people are reacting to it so viscerally in either positive or negative ways, I think is kind of the point. It's not about dividing or anything. It's about saying, showing this to someone and going, do you know what this means? And they go, I don't know. My 2-year-old daughter, okay, so this is a bizarre story. I'll get to that interview in a second. She was eating cereal and she dropped her spoon on the ground, and then there was cat hair on the ground. So her spoon that she was going to go pick up was covered in cat hair. So I said, oh, I'll go get you a new spoon. And she looked over at me and she's like, yeah. So I go and grab a spoon and I'm like, I'm Spoon Man. And then I started laughing. So I turned on the TV and put on Spoon Man by Soundgarden. And I'm like standing there going, Spoon Man. And we watched the video together. And then she looked at me and she pointed at me and goes, Spoon Man. So I became Spoon Man. And then through a random series of events, she kept seeing this on the screen because it was my user profile for the YouTube channel, because I'd changed it to this during this original IPS chat as a joke. So then she looks at my user profile, my avatar, through the YouTube thing on the screen and points at that and goes, Spoon Man. So then I make a pin and I've made some patches and I made some drawings of this. And now whenever she sees this, she goes, Spoon Man. So she calls this Spoon Man. And it's like this series of cascading inside jokes that are, they're kind of only funny to me, but the idea that these images can cause reactions, I think is really important. And I mean, if you get into the whole globe deception, it's all based on a ball. It's all based on this singular image. So using an imagery like this and putting this patch on your sleeve and having some fun with it, it's all about having fun with it. And I think that I haven't been around Flat Earth very long, but in the last 6 months, I've been focusing on having some fun with it and creating some imagery that doesn't have to specifically do with the shape of whatever Flat Earth might be, or like a globe with an X through it. Not that those are wrong, but it's something a bit detached from the actual specific issue at hand. The same way that politics aside, the same way that a cartoon frog could have represented a whole anti-social justice warrior type element of American politics is fascinating to me. I'm fascinated by these mimetic placements. And yeah, so the interview that is a crazy abrupt segue here. The interview that I did was on KMOX radio, and it was in a St. Louis AM radio station. What I didn't realize at the time was I was just replying to a Twitter feed that I went to hashtag Flat Earth, and in that feed, 12 minutes ago, someone said, hey, are there any Flat Earthers out there? We'd love to talk to you. Please call this number. So I went, called the number. I thought it might just be like a small town newspaper or something. And the guy's like, you're on the air. Let's talk about Flat Earth. So you believe in this Flat Earth thing? And I did an interview in 15 minutes. I went like full, I'm going to use our own terminology here, but full red pill all the way to the tip of the beak, all the way through Flat Earth, saying, well, there's no model that everyone agrees upon. And in fact, when you get right down to it, a lot of these NASA things that they go do, these theater things, or actually have religious elements that tie into some sort of mystery religion. And it was way too far for the audience. It was 15 minutes of just me going from, no, I think you've totally mistaken what Flat Earthers are, and here's something that you've probably never really realized. But what I didn't realize was that AM radio station went to 44 states. It was syndicated all over the US. And it took me 5 days to get that audio feed, because I think they went back and I think they may have attached a guy to the end of it. who came in and said, well, Kyle's sort of right. There were a lot of astronauts that were Freemasons, but that was in the past. And there, you know, he's good. It's good that he's out trying to seek the truth. But you know what really debunks the flat Earth? Meteorites. And it's just like the whole story, the whole radio interview, I think it really caught them off guard. They had to do damage control. And 5 days later, when I eventually did get them to post the real MP3 feed to their website, that little bit was tagged on. It may have been tagged on the end. I don't know if that person called in real time, but you can go to Kyle KMOX radio to hear the interview. And it's huge. Like it's the thing is, I don't think anyone listening to that really got much out of it. It was the fact that it was so outside the normal realm. Maybe tens of thousands of people heard of it. But the fact that that little clip was on mainstream radio and now has been taken to YouTube and stuff, I think that's the point. I was doing this with One Red Paperclip. People, they're like, oh, you're trading a paperclip and you got this thing. And what do you got now? A snowmobile, cool. But when I would go and appear on television, on TV back in that day, it legitimized it in people's minds. They said, oh, this isn't just a joke. Like, you're actually doing this. Or you're doing it for real. Doing it for real implies, I think, the idea that mainstream media talks about it. And unfortunate as that is, as much as we'd like to just leave mainstream media behind, if we can get hardcore real truths about our impressions of what this thing might be on mainstream media, it's going to turn a lot of heads. This is a big ship. Like, we've all been in these dinghies and we're speeding towards the shore or whatever, the ice wall, if you want to use that metaphor. There's a big ship there. And the only way you're going to get the captain of that ship to start to get up towards the bridge, or at least let people on the ship know that the captain is steering the ship towards a spinning ball versus this amazing ice wall that we should go check out. Stupid metaphors, but I really do think it's going to take a lot more appearances on mainstream media, and by real flat earthers, not these sort of like selected from old school families silver class of pop stars like Tita Tequila, B.O.B., which I don't disagree with them. I'm not saying they're fake flat earthers or any of that stuff, but why are they owning the narrative? I think the more that we get out there and appear on media and own our own version of at least our portion of the narrative, so that we can't all be painted by this picture that all flat earthers believe this, because that's absolutely not the truth. That's like saying all Christians believe this, or all Muslims believe this. It's like, there's shades of gray all over the place. And as flat earthers, what we would actually say is, well, we don't believe any of it. This is just what we think, and we can know what not to believe. It's almost like a reverse belief system when you get right down to it.
Well, I think you're wrong. I think you definitely will have affected a lot of people. It reminded me a lot of some of Mark Sargent's interviews, where the interviewer is kind of coming off the cuff in a way that's saying, I'm going to ridicule you in this interview. You could detect it. And then almost immediately it's like, what, you really, but you actually mean it? You know, you kind of caught them off guard, and people will pick up on that. You know, the fact that it's had damage control in the aftermath, I don't think it matters. I think when you're going out the way you were, people heard it. They heard it live. And that's going to have an impact on a huge number of people.
It's so fascinating. Yeah, like a Mark Sargent interview where the host is almost chuckling, like, look at this clown, this conspiracy nut. And he comes on and he's just like, no, well, that's actually not true. If you look at these things, this is the actual truth. And you can hear the host going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, how do you know that? And how do you know who to trust? And he's like, well, that's the whole point. I'm not trusting them. I'm actually looking for myself. And if you actually go and look, if the audience goes and looks for themselves, they're going to go, oh, he was right. Not that the host was wrong, but he revealed new information. He's actually moving things forward on this subject. And that's
or they're brave and do actually say something like, well, meteorites surely debunk flat Earth. But they wouldn't say surely. They would say meteorites debunk flat Earth. It's nonsense, you know, or some ham-handed rubbish debunking. Because your average Joe Normal or radio host DJ, he's Joe Normal as far as I'm concerned, isn't going to know the intricacies that flat Earth trolls know. You know, they're not going to know all of the finite minutiae when it comes to this subject. They're just going to know what the heliocentric mainstream tells them is the case. Mm-hmm. You know, well, we've got pictures, haven't we?
Facts. They know the facts. What's the truth on this? What's the reality? And then someone provides them an easy answer and they're cool. Great. I'm going to go get a sandwich. Like, people they don't want to put the time in. And if you can go, well, no, this is totally actually a falsehood. here's what's a more probable explanation, they're going to go, okay.
And sad but true, but you're right in terms of, unfortunately, a lot of people won't believe it until they see it on mainstream TV. Once it reaches that point, and I think it can, because as I said earlier on in the show, I think we're dealing with systems that are in place and there's no man behind the curtain actually standing watching. There's been lots of men behind the curtains that have made these systems possible, but it means that there's a good chance we can actually, or like you did, get yourself onto mainstream media, get the ear of a huge number of people, because we can, there's the element of surprise. It's not like a lot of the other conspiracies that are being censored. We're not. I genuinely don't think we are. Before we round out, can you give us some a full plug to your channel and anywhere else you want to direct anybody who may watch this Google Plus stream?
I will, and I was going to mention a media guy who was sort of anti-flat Earth at the beginning, who's sort of changed more to a neutral, open-minded stance. Is a dude named Mark Devlin. He has a podcast called Good Vibrations, and he's entertaining the idea in a really neutral way. I just want to give him a plug because I think he's one of these guys that I did hear initially do the anti-Mark Sargent type thing, and he's kind of come full circle and gone, there's more to this. So minds can change quite quickly. But yeah, my stuff is the YouTube channel is Kyle MacMac2, KYLEMACMAC2. I did have a Kyle MacMac original, and it got taken down like 10 years ago. So I've had YouTube channels get taken down. At One Red Paperclip, ONERED Paperclip on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, I think as like Fepe the Penguin. Just Google Kyle MacDonald Red Paperclip. You'll find all my stuff. And the website for the Red Paperclip story is oneredpaperclip.com.
Good stuff. Well, I'm going to say a massive, huge thank you, Kyle, for doing Flat Earth United. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks. I'm really, it's kind of, I'm a bit in disbelief that I'm on this show because I started watching it like 6 months ago. So it's great to be here.
It's testament to how good your content is. I mean, I hope you can pick up a few subscribers. Don't get the big lull afterwards if you don't. It's not that big a show, believe me. But yes, I will also say a massive thank you to the audience who have joined us. If you want to continue to watch Kyle and I chat, hopefully for a little bit afterwards, click on the link to the OBS feed in the info box below this video. If you're new to this channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon to keep up to date with videos from Nathan Oakley 1980. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video. Yay! That bit's done. So we're still live, great. But we're still live on OBS.
Yeah. I've never done one of these interviews for like an actual topic that isn't just repeating the Red Paperclip story. I've done 50 of these for just purely talking about Red Paperclip, but it's much it's a whole different headspace than just sort of like repeating information.
Well, I've seen them all. You've been publishing them. I've watched a large chunk of your One Red Paperclip interviews, and you've got them down pat. I think you might have. I didn't anticipate you being rusty because, of course, they're fresh in my mind because I'm watching the re-uploads all the time. And in your usual idiot, me being the idiot, you think, well, obviously he's going to be as polished as he was the moment he made that video 10 years ago or whenever it was. But of course, the list isn't as fresh in your mind because you're not constantly doing One Red Paperclip interviews.
After 2 beers, if someone cornered me in a bar and they're like, wait a second, you're the guy here, let me hear all the trades, I can hammer through them. But we were talking about completely different things, and my head was somewhere very different than thinking of things that happened 10 years ago. But yeah, it's one of these things where everyone, and I mean this, I don't always talk about it in the main kind of interviews about the paperclip thing because it's important to kind of move through the story. But everyone focuses on the objects, the trade objects, the paperclip, the pen, and all that stuff. And I kind of put those there as placeholders, as like chapter headings. But the real story is the people. I was trading with 14 different people. It wasn't about what the object was. I mean, the object was part of the story, but it was meeting the person. It was meeting Karina. It was meeting Alice Cooper. It was meeting all these people and actually working together. And I'm finding a very similar sense of collaborative energy in Flat Earth, where people are creating their own shows. It's participatory versus content absorption versus just sort of consuming content. People are making stuff. And I mean, I didn't make any YouTube videos for years, really. And in this year, I've made probably 200 and probably 150 hours of ideas and content out there. So I encourage everyone, if you're watching this now or if you're watching anything, make stuff. It's more fun to make a video that gets seen by 10 people where you hear a comment than to simply consume things. Kind of balance, have a bit more of a media conversation, if you will.
Yeah, it's properly fun. You know, there's loads of positives that can be taken away from doing YouTube videos. And what we see often in the videos is loads of negativity. And you summed it up on the show. You just take the things that you enjoy doing and you do those things. If you enjoy making Fepe artwork, do it. You know, if that's something you enjoy. If you hate Fepe, keep well away from Fepe. You know, because it's not going to give you joy. So why bother doing it? You know, I'm all for doing things.
I'm not all Fepe all the time. If a better meme comes along, like, see you later, let's go. Like, I'll join that new kind of the new thing. But I mean, with that in mind, if anyone, I didn't mention this on the main show, but if anyone wants a Fepe patch, which is triggering, it's orange border and it's a 3" by 3". So if anybody wants a Fepe patch, please email me at oneredpaperclip@gmail.com and I will sort it out. I want to get these out there. I want these to be on people's arms and people to question, like,
some people don't get it though. Some people genuinely, it goes over their head. You know, that I saw one, it might have been a friend, it might have been a foe, I can't remember, but somebody did a breakdown of all the subliminals that are in Fepe. And it's like, well, yeah, it's hijacking that idea and using it against your enemy. It's like if somebody fires an arrow at you, you catch it in the air and you have a good look at how it's constructed and how it works. And then, sure enough, you can then make similar arrows and fire them straight back again. You know, but ultimately the arrow that you're using is their arrow. And that's all that, you know, hijacking things like subliminal messages or the whole, you know, declaring his allegiance to Satan. IPS does this all the time. And it's like, it's Jupiter's delight in reverse.
Yeah, and I've had many people, and like, I'm not really sticking up for anyone. I'll point out where if someone's perception is maybe off or an idea, I'll just point it out. I'm not gonna like say that person's wrong and they're bad or anything. But when people go, "Yo, IPS is a shill, man. You should watch out. He's a shill," and it's like, well, he might be. He may be a psyop, super high level operative, pointed out to go right to the front edge and steer flat earth. He might be. We don't really know. Nobody knows except for maybe only him. Maybe no one's paying him to do this, and he's trying to take flat earth into a bizarre corner under his own volition. It might not be a government or some sort of organized thing. Maybe, but I've met him. I've hung out with him. My daughter has seen there being on, like, you know, spent time with him around him. My girlfriend. I've actually spent time and met these people and watched a lot of their stuff. And I think I have a pretty good judge of how far to trust individuals based on my interactions with them. If I just see someone random video, I'm only going to trust them a certain amount. But when you start actually spending time with people, you realize a lot of these shill spotting ideas, while there's legitimacy to the idea of shill spotting, in practice, it doesn't really do much, because even if someone is a shill, interacting with them to a certain degree can be beneficial. And if you really want to get into it, if you're really, really, really playing a mind game, which I don't do this at all, but I know people that are manipulative and do, the old adage of you want to keep your enemies just even closer than your friends, that rings true. So when people scream out and run away and accuse people of stuff, that to me reeks of cowardice. It reeks to me of actual inability to discern reality and to deal with something that might be there. So I'm not gonna, man, it's so bizarre. I don't really, I try to avoid all the YouTube drama, but it's at the same time, it's so interesting. It is Duper's delight in reverse. Like, it's, if you say something that triggers people, like I was, what size do you want to make the patch? I thought 2.5 inches. And then I said, wait a second, 3 by 3 inches is funnier. And then they said, would you like a border on it? And I was like, well, no. And I'm like, wait a second, orange. So it's orange 3 by 333. Like, that's
that's all it is. This is the point. So while you're explaining exactly that, right, you've just detailed how that patch has ended up with that border, with certain decisions, and you've just gone, no. Oh, well, actually, yes, because it may trigger somebody. You know, it's the same. Disney, no different. You know, when they put the subliminals in there, they put them in there for a reason. Some guy somewhere has done it. You know, it might be an individual, it might be a group of them having a laugh, but it doesn't make any difference to the outcome. But people are people. It's just guys and girls doing their thing. I mean, I get this more and more these days, and it makes me smile. I encourage it also. With the whole potato clan thing, you know, people assume that we're a bunch of shills, that we're a bunch of MI5 paid agents. Oh, no, it's not MI5 for you. It'd be CIA for you guys. Or Canadian. What is it in Canada?
CSIS. CSIS.
CSIS.
CSIS, yeah.
CSIS agent. Oh, that's cool. That's got a good ring to it.
Too. So the Royal Canadian Mounted Police would have a high order division. I think officially it's CSIS, but it would be kind of like the RCMP is kind of like the FBI. They're the federal police, and then CSIS would be a rung above it. But they're very interoperable.
You seem to know an awful lot about this.
Yeah, well, this is the crazy thing. Now that I've started to look into this, I have a friend from high school who, rumor had it, she was recruited by CSIS. And I've tried to find her name online, and it doesn't exist. There's one document I found where she's on there. So when you start to think about how these agencies bring people in and they change their names and they give them new identities and personhoods, you start looking at some of these psyops where a number of people died. Now, did they die for real? Was their character retired? Were they? You mentioned the witness relocation program.
That was something I wanted to talk to you on the main show, because that was genius. Again, I think I left some comments on those videos where you were basically saying you've got so many systems already in place to vanish people. And if these people have got any motivation, you know, people are motivated by very simple stuff, you know, but it would be easy. It would be so easy.
You want $500,000 to change your name and go live somewhere else for 10 years? Sure. Like most people are many people, I'm not interested in that at all. But if you had a sampling of 10,000 people that you could figure out who psychologically would fit that, who could be trusted, people are going to turncoat all the time on this. It's not that hard to imagine it happening. And I think with operations like these psyops where they're bringing people in, I mean, killing people off on the Challenger disaster, like that one, if you go and look, it looks like those real people may actually be still alive. I think there's a bit of disinfo with that whole picture of the astronauts. There's probably more to the story than just that, or maybe not. But many of these events are coded as to, so like 33 3x3 orange. We laugh at all these things, but the fact that astronauts were drinking Tang and it was orange, that means something to insiders. Insiders are using some of these things to communicate to other people. And Marty Leeds 33.com. Go to Marty Leeds, his latest video on de-occulting the Vegas hoax. He goes through the names and the numbers, and he's like, these are very clear patterns here that are signaling that this was a certain type of event. This was certain, it looks very clearly that this was an occulted, esoteric homage to, in many cases, sun worship and things like this. And it's in clear sight. So what a lot of these agencies, if they're using a 47 encoded, it often means intelligence. 8 often means intelligence. Just because you use the number 8 or 47, it doesn't mean that it's intelligent. It means that in the context of these events, there's going to be subtle spelling mistakes that when you take the words through basic gematria reductions, and I know you can go full Zachary K. Hubbard and everything means something, and yeah, maybe it does, but I think that in certain instances, it's very important to realize that I think the simple ciphers and codings that are happening in plain sight are just there. They're not hidden. They're in plain sight to people who can see it. Eyes that can see these codes will know there's something there. This, unless I am now somehow inducted into alt-right iconoclastic Freemasonry because I made this, it's a total false positive. It's like seeing that as me proof of doing those things, that's not rational thinking. But when you see an event where it has a certain number of death tolls, and then you can see that it was 100 people died and 230 were injured, and that adds to 230, and that actually 330, and then you knock off the 0. And there are certain patterns there. It's never overt on what happened in the 3rd month of the 2003, and what was the firefighter's name, and what were you look at some of the names, there's a lot of coding that happens. It's a rabbit hole that is a whole other subject. But when you're doing things like this, it's just for fun. It's having fun with weaponized superstition. But those superstitions are often based on things that are real. Like a simple one, like the superstition of don't walk under a ladder. That's based on, if you go under a ladder, the person on the ladder will drop things on your head. You know, a black cat crosses your path. That means, I mean, I had a black cat on the show. I've had black cats all my life. That one's nonsense. But to someone who's afraid of or allergic to cats, there's shades of truth in all these things. And if I was an agency who needed to get information out to people on the inside, I would do it in plain sight, coded through very basic names, symbols, and numbers that most people would just simply assume. First of all, that people's brains aren't looking for these things. But second of all, everyone assumes that these events are all happening. So the idea that they could be hoaxed is the furthest thing from their brains. And then you would have to have the information. And what we're essentially pulling apart with Flat Earth and exposing these hoaxes is taking all of these elements that allow the hoax to happen in plain sight and pull it apart. And you know, this is all my interpretation. I actually uncovered, which I think is really nailed on the mark, is one of the survivors of the Vegas thing was Sheldon Mack, and he was shot apparently. But his dad was a newscaster up here in British Columbia, and the whole Mack family has connections through Vegas and the banks and stuff. And I'm not saying the guy's a liar, and I know that drifts into libel and stuff. Law. I'm saying I don't believe his story, and it's a very different thing. I don't believe that that's what happened. I don't think that story is rational. It looks like when you start pulling apart all the encoding and the elements at play there, that this Vegas thing wasn't actually it was a religious ceremony when you get right down to it, and they were initiating people into higher rungs of a certain strata. But the main, real, actual to the general population goal was to fear and sell security. So they're going to sell guns, sell security systems, and cause fear and panic, and then force governments to create triage centers at these live things. And whoever is creating all the guns, security systems, and triage centers and ambulances, they're going to make tons of money. So they're always multifaceted, these large events. And I mean, when you get right back to it, there's nothing more multifaceted than the globe, the Earth. That's where all of these psyops are taking place, including the psyops on children's cartoons or in classrooms. So anyways, yeah, I'm rambling, but I'm fascinated by these subjects.
Talking of children's cartoons, I'm going to go to the chat in a minute. I don't know if you've got the chat up, but we'll say hi to a few people in there in a minute. But one of the things Crow777 said, and my jaw hit the floor when he said this, was about them using animals to educate children. And as soon as he said it, I was like, geez, you're right. And it suddenly links back into Darwin. And at the time, my kid was sat with my wife, and she's got the iPad, and she's playing a cartoon. Paw Patrol, also on the list, by the way. But yeah, I don't know what it was, random cartoon. And I said to her, just out of interest, is the ABC 123 song or whatever that's playing now being sung by an animal? And she went, yeah, it is. I was like, unbelievable. You just don't think about it. You watch a lot of these cartoons and go, oh no, there's something nefarious in there. I just don't know quite what it is. And then someone like Crow comes along, just says just a sentence, and you go, oh, of course, that's why it's done that way. That makes perfect sense. Now that makes sense. Thank you, Crow. Really appreciate it.
Transmutation of the adult higher mind to a lower level in order to further cast spells. Crow's amazing. The problem is, it's like anything. Like, what do? Do you let your kids you force them not to watch TV? I think you just kind of have to fight back and expose them to the idea that this could be, there are other ways to do it. Like we need to notice it first, and then we have to come up with a rational way in order to get around this. Like if my kid goes to a birthday party, they're going to eat cake and candy. Like it's going to happen. I'm not going to be like, you're not allowed to eat any candy. You're not allowed to have any fun. But around the house, you feed them well, and you try and teach good habits and good things. I think it's the best thing we can do. But as far as the childhood programming, it's so everywhere, and almost all children's clothing, like all kids' clothes, have dinosaurs on them. It's so crazy. They all do. There's like, not exaggerating, 1/4 of boys' shirts have a dinosaur on them. My nephew's 5. More than 25% of his clothing has dinosaurs on it.
They've co-opted all of the nursery rhymes and introduced space and dinosaurs. I was listening to 3 Blind Mice, and instead of the tails being cut off with a carving knife, they went to the moon on a spaceship. So I'm singing along, and I'm like, cut off their... What? What do you mean they go to the moon? What? That's not the nursery rhyme I remember.
Well, I mean, we've already been there. It's easy. Mice can go there these days. She's got a pair of, my daughter has a pair of pajamas, the zip up the front onesies, and it has dinosaurs on it. And then she has another one, they're completely different set, different dino patterns on it. And she just hates them. I don't know what it is. And she'll just be putting them on, and she's like, I'll be putting them on her, no dinos, and she's writhing, and like, it's bizarre because we're laughing because we're like, well, it's cold and you need to wear these because we don't have anything else for you to wear. Everything else is dirty. And we're zipping her into this onesie with dinosaurs on it, and she's like, no dinos, no dinos. And my girlfriend and I are laughing because we're seeing it from the whole like, whoa, okay, yeah, like maybe this is the appropriate response to this idea of dinos. But I mean, she does the same thing with jeans too, so I don't really think that she's actually seeing through the dino hoax at this age.
No, probably has a natural aversion to them, or you're giving off a vibe whenever you're looking at them, or when you see them, you're saying under your breath, fake. Right, I'm going to do some shout outs. So, Christian, good to see you. Ugdina, thanks for being here. Really nice to have you. Joven, thanks for being here. Who's your flatty? One of the best screen names. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you. Andres Ace. I can never say his name right. Flat Sabbath, good to see you. Angel Raven 444, thanks for being on the show. Chatting away happily. Farquay FAAQCEE. How would you say that? Farquay C. Whatever. Good to have you here. I will get your name right eventually. Rune Thorson. What Kyle just said. He agrees, apparently. Good to know. Brandon Cook. I have freedom. You certainly do. You're the judge. You decide. Anybody? Flat Earth Red Pill. Have you here? Irk Childs. T. Gordon. T.Y. Gordon, I should say.
Ty Gorton. That's
Ty
another
Gorton.
thing. Flat Revival Magazine. Ty Gorton. I've got a copy, not in arm's reach, but here in the house. And he's got Crow 777 doing a monthly column. So I'll give a shout out to Ty, and definitely anyone who wants to read Flat Revival Magazine, go check it out.
Flat Sabbath says, call me naive if you want, but I don't believe in FE shells. No, me neither. Seems like an oxymoron. Flat Glenn Clark Earth, good to have you. Martin Liedke, good to see you, my friend. Peace and love, as you would say. Alba says hello. Hello to you too. Arwin, good to see you. Enjoying your live streams. Another content producer. Good to see you. Getting to the end of the list. Doug Nordling says thank you both. Thank you for being here. Much obliged. And I think that's pretty much everybody. There was one comment that Who's Your Flatty made that I wanted to read out. Where's that gone? Crisis actor relocation program, he says.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's people who go, oh, these actors are horrible, they're crisis actors, they're just like paid off, they're bad actors. I think it goes further than that. I think some of these crisis actors are in like on a higher order of the dupe. So you've got the crisis actor managers, but in order to get, if you're going to be inducted or initiated into some of these like behind the scenes actual secret societies or actual secret clubs that are pulling off some of these events, you need to be complicit in one. You need to help arrange one. So I think as people sort of get induced into these, initiated into these secret societies, they need to be part of these hoaxes. And the crisis actors that we think are just bad actors or hired or whatever, sure. But I think there's many of the actors in these plays, these stage plays, that are doing this for a internal purpose. And it's sort of in order to either have their character killed off so they can join intelligence, or that they can show their willingness to oblige in one of these, from my interpretation, in many ways, rituals, sort of tragic theater, if you will, in real life, that essentially fools the eccentric populace into thinking it's one other thing. But internally, they know the actual story, and they're acting these things out to sort of show that they're the tip of that beak. And I know it gets really foggy with religion and actual rituals, but I do think they're actually conducting, in many cases of these things, stagecraft, which serves their own purpose for internal sort of societal structure. And people that they distinctly want to be in these positions to to Crisis Act. They're not just doing it because they're paid off. They're like, I'm doing this so I can move further up the chain of command in this little power structure we've got going.
Sure. I'm going to give a couple more shout outs. One massive thank you to Infinite Plane Society for your generous, what did he call it, investment in my super chat. So thank you very much. And also Games Bond, my apologies, Games Bond 2007. Thank you very much for your contribution to the super chat. So yeah, great. I'm going to say one last thank you to you also, Kyle, for being on the behind the scenes stream part of this show. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. It's amazing to be able to share these ideas and come on the show, because I think that this stuff is, I haven't watched Netflix or TV in almost a year. I've just been completely involved in this world, and it's nice to be able to have a bit of insight and ideas to share versus just consuming content. So if you're watching this, anyone else, I'm not saying take Nathan Oakley off his couch, but definitely I think there's room for this to grow, and it's going to expand. And as it expands, Nathan, your show is going to just get more popular. So there you go.
Hopefully so. Once again, a massive thank you to Kyle MacDonald for being on Flat Earth United Kingdom, both behind the scenes and on the main G+ show, which is linked in the info box below this stream. Once this show renders, be sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel, subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with videos from Nathan Oakley. Most importantly, thanks for watching. I've been Nathan Oakley. I will see you all in the next video.